Learned my mother's secret will, leaving everything to my spoiled brother. So I cut all ties and exposed the truth of years of manipulation. Now let's start the video. When I was 6, my dad passed away. It's not something I talk about much because honestly I don't remember all the details, but the memory of that day is etched in my brain. It was a Saturday morning, and Dad was fixing the kitchen sink. I remember sitting on the floor playing with my action figures when he called me over. "Hey buddy, I need my little assistant," he said. That's what he always called me when he needed a hand. I grabbed the flashlight and stood next to him while he fiddled with the pipes. He was making jokes about how the sink had a mind of its own and kept saying we'd go get ice cream after he was done. And then, out of nowhere, he froze. He just stopped moving, like someone hit pause. I thought he was joking at first. He was the kind of dad who always played little pranks on me, but then he fell over, and it wasn't a joke. I remember screaming for Mom. She came running in, saw him on the floor, and started shouting his name over and over. The rest of the day is kind of blurry. I remember the paramedics showing up and taking him away on a stretcher. I remember sitting on the couch, clutching my favorite stuffed bear, while Mom cried on the phone with someone. Later, I overheard her saying it was a brain aneurysm. I was too young to really understand what that meant, but I knew it was serious because Dad never came back. After Dad passed, it felt like our house went quiet. He was the loud one, the fun one. He'd always play music while making breakfast or crack silly jokes during dinner. Without him, the house just felt heavy. Mom tried her best, I guess. She went back to work, kept food on the table, and made sure I got to school on time, but she wasn't the same. She'd get snappy over little things, like if I left my toys out or spilled my juice. I started feeling like I had to be extra careful not to upset her. About a year later, Mom started going to this support group for widowed parents. At first, I didn't think much of it. She'd leave me with my grandma on Wednesday nights, and when she came back, she seemed calmer, like she'd had a chance to breathe. Then one day, she introduced me to Dan. He was someone she met at the group. Dan seemed nice enough. He was tall and soft-spoken with a kind smile. He brought me a box of Legos the first time he came over, which definitely won me over. For a bit, Mom seemed happier when he was around, and I figured if he made her smile again, then maybe it wasn't so bad. Within a year, they got married, and Dan moved in. Things were okay for a while. Dan wasn't like my dad. He wasn't goofy or loud, but he was patient and tried to make an effort with me. He taught me how to ride my bike without training wheels and showed me how to fish. He wasn't trying to replace Dad, and I appreciated that. But then Mom dropped the news she was pregnant. I didn't really know how to feel about it. Part of me was excited to have a sibling, but another part of me worried things were going to change. And boy, was I right about that. Noah was born when I was 8, and from the moment he came home, everything became about him. Mom quit her teaching job to stay home full-time. "He needs me during these early years," she'd say whenever someone questioned her decision. Meanwhile, I was still a kid who needed her too, but it felt like she didn't see that. At first, I tried to help out. I'd bring Mom diapers or hold Noah's bottle while she got his bath ready. I thought maybe if I helped, she'd notice me more, but instead it felt like the more I did, the less she saw me. She'd forget to pack my lunch for school or miss my soccer games because Noah was having a rough day. Dan noticed. I'd catch him watching Mom with this worried look on his face, especially when she'd brush me off to tend to Noah. One night, when I was struggling with my math homework, he sat down beside me and said, "Sometimes people get so caught up in one thing that they forget about everything else. It doesn't mean they don't care." I wasn't sure if he was trying to comfort me or himself, but it stuck with me. As Noah got older, the imbalance became impossible to ignore. He could throw a tantrum in the middle of dinner, and Mom would rush to calm him down while the rest of us sat there awkwardly. If I dared to complain about anything, she'd snap, "He's just a baby, be patient." It didn't matter that I wasn't a baby anymore and still needed her attention too. By the time I was in middle school, I'd learned to keep my head down and stay out of the way. I focused on school, hung out with friends, and relied on Dan for support. He'd take me to my soccer games and even started coming to parent-teacher conferences when Mom couldn't be bothered. Looking back, I think he felt bad for me, but he was also walking a tightrope, trying not to upset Mom while still being there for me. So, by the time I hit high school, the whole Mom puts Noah first thing wasn't even up for debate anymore. It was just the way things were. I had kind of gotten used to it by then, even though it still sucked. But man, it's like Noah could do anything, and she'd spin it into some kind of win for him. Take the time he broke her favorite vase, just so you get what I'm talking about. It was one of those fancy, glass ones she used to keep on the dining table. He was running around, throwing a ball in the house, which, by the way, she had just told him not to do. and bam, there goes the vase. You know what she said? Oh, he's just full of energy. That's what makes him so special. Special. I'd have been grounded for a week if I'd pulled that when I was his age. And it wasn't just the big stuff. Even the little things felt like a slap in the face. If I left my shoes by the front door instead of putting them away, it was a lecture about respecting the house. If Noah did it? Oh, sweetie, you must have been so tired. Like, really? He's tired? I was doing double the chores he ever did, but somehow he was the one who needed a break. Dan noticed it too. He'd try to step in here and there, but it never went anywhere. One time, we were all at dinner, and Mom was hovering over Noah, cutting his food for him. Mind you, the kid was 9 at this point. Dan put his fork down and said, "Clara, you don't have to do that. He can cut his own chicken." You'd think he suggested sending Noah to boot camp the way Mom reacted. "He's just a kid, Dan. You're always so hard on him." Then she turned to me and said, "Mia, why don't you help your brother?" Like it was my job now. I pretended I didn't hear her and focused on my mashed potatoes. After that, Dan stopped pushing as much. I think he realized it wasn't worth the argument. Instead, he doubled down on supporting me. He started taking me to all my soccer practices and games, even when they were out of town. He'd cheer louder than any of the other parents, which used to embarrass me at the time, but now I'm grateful for it. Mom, on the other hand, barely showed up. Noah has a dentist appointment, or Noah wasn't feeling well, or her go-to excuses. Once, she actually said she didn't want to leave Noah alone with Dan because he doesn't know how to handle Noah's sensitivities. Sensitivities. That word became her shield for everything Noah did or didn't do. It wasn't just at home either. At school, I started noticing how different things were for me compared to other kids. My friends' parents would show up to their plays, bake cookies for their fundraisers, or at least remember what classes they were taking. Mom? She couldn't even tell you what grade I was in half the time. By then, I somehow became Noah's unofficial maid. If his room was messy, Mom would look at me and say, "Mia, be a dear and help your brother tidy up." Not ask, tell, like it was just expected. One time, I refused. I had a huge test the next day and was up to my ears in homework. I told her Noah could clean his own room, and she lost it. He's still learning. Why can't you just help him out? You're his big sister. It's your job to guide him. My job? Since when was that my job? Dan stepped in that time. Clara, she's not his maid. He's old enough to clean up after himself. Mom glared at him and said, "I knew it. You've always favored Mia over Noah." Dan threw his hands up and walked away. After that, I cleaned Noah's room just to avoid more drama, but I hated every second of it. High school was a mix of escape and more of the same. At school, I felt like I could breathe a little, but at home, it was the same routine. Noah was the center of the universe, and I was just there to keep things running. Graduation day came, and I was so excited to finally be done with high school. I scanned the crowd for Mom and Dan, and there was Dan, grinning ear to ear and clapping like I just won an Olympic medal. Mom was there too, but she kept checking her phone, probably texting Noah's babysitter. That night, Dan pulled me aside and handed me a folder full of college brochures. "You've got a bright future ahead, kid," he said. "Pick wherever you want to go. I'll make it happen." It was one of the best moments of my life. Of course, Mom wasn't happy. "What about Noah?" she asked when she found out. "He's going to need that money for his future." Dan didn't budge. "We'll figure it out when the time comes," he said. "Right now, this is for Mia." I chose a college a few hours away, not too far, but far enough that I could finally feel free. Moving day was bittersweet. Dan helped me carry my boxes up to my dorm room, cracking jokes the whole time. Mom didn't come because Noah was anxious about her leaving. As I hugged Dan goodbye, I realized he was the only one who ever truly had my back. I promised myself I wouldn't forget that. So fast forward a few years after college, and I was finally starting to feel like I had my life on track. I had a decent job, worked hard, and after saving up for what felt like forever, I managed to buy my first apartment. I was so proud of how far I'd come, and I wanted to celebrate, so I decided to throw a housewarming dinner and invite the whole family. I called Mom to let her know. "I'm finally hosting. I'll cook dinner, Dan. I'm even making your favorite lasagna." Dan sounded genuinely excited. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he said. Then Mom chimed in, "Oh, honey, I don't think we can make it. Noah has plans that day." I paused for a second, trying to process that. Plans? Noah was 20 years old, jobless, and barely left the house. What kind of plans could he possibly have? "What plans?" I asked, trying not to sound too annoyed. "He's meeting some friends," she said vaguely, as if that explained everything. "You know how much he needs these social interactions." I couldn't help but laugh under my breath. "Okay, well, You and Dan can still come, right? She sighed dramatically, like I was asking for the world. I'll try, but I can't promise anything. That was the first red flag. The night of the dinner, Dan showed up on time with a plant. This place looks great, kiddo, he said, giving me a big hug. It meant a lot to hear that from him. As for Mom and Noah, they didn't show, not even a text. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. Over dinner, Dan and I got to talking about everything going on back home. He didn't hold back, which was rare for him. Usually he tried to keep things positive, but this time he just let it all out. Noah's 20 now, he said. He's not in school, doesn't have a job, and spends most of his time gaming. I tried to get him into my construction company, just to give him some direction, but Clara wouldn't have it. She said no. Dan nodded. Said it was beneath him. Can you believe that? Beneath him, he doesn't even want to try. I wasn't surprised. So what's the plan then? Just let him sit around forever? That's the thing, Dan said, his voice dropping like he didn't want to say it out loud. I don't think Clara has a plan. She keeps saying he'll figure it out eventually, but when? He's already 20. Hearing all that made me feel even more validated about moving out and starting my own life. It also made me realize how much Dan had been carrying on his shoulders. He'd always tried to keep things together, but it was clear he was tired. A couple of years went by, and things didn't change much. Noah stayed at home, still jobless and unmotivated. Dan kept trying to nudge him toward some kind of direction, but nothing ever stuck. And then Dan was gone. It happened so suddenly, he collapsed at work one day, and by the time the paramedics got there, it was too late. Heart attack. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Dan had been my rock for so many years, the one person who always showed up for me. Losing him felt like losing the only real support I had. The funeral was hard, not just because of the loss, but because of how performative Mom was about the whole thing. She cried and told everyone how much she loved Dan and how she didn't know how she'd go on without him, but to me, it didn't feel genuine. It felt like she was mourning the security he brought to her life, not the person he was. Noah didn't even bother dressing properly for the funeral. He showed up in a hoodie, his face buried in his phone half the time. Mom made excuses for him, of course. He's processing his grief in his own way, she said, like that made it okay. Standing there at Dan's grave, I couldn't help but feel like history was repeating itself. Another father figure gone too soon. Another funeral filled with empty words. And once again, I was left to figure things out on my own. After Dan, things really started unraveling. I mean, they were already bad. But now there wasn't even a pretense of balance in the family. Dan was the one who kept things semi-functional, and without him it was just Mom and Noah. And somehow I wanted to help, but I don't know how I got roped into it. It started with Mom calling me about little things. First it was the leaking roof. Then the washing machine broke. Then Noah needed some new educational materials, which turned out to be gaming equipment. I brushed it off at first. Grief does weird things to people, right? But the calls got more frequent, and every time it ended with, "We just need a little help." At first I'd send $200 here, $300 there, nothing crazy, but it added up. And of course, every time I helped, Mom would go on about how grateful she was and how Noah was working so hard to figure things out. That's when I should have known. Noah figuring things out was code for him doing absolutely nothing while I picked up the slack. One day Mom called in tears. "Mia, I don't know what we're going to do. The bills are piling up and Noah is trying his best, but we just can't make ends meet." Her voice cracked like she was on the verge of a full breakdown. I felt bad. Despite everything, she's still my mom, So I asked her how much she needed. $1,500 a month would cover everything, she said, like it was no big deal. Back then I thought, $1,500 a month? That's not chump change, especially not for me. But then I thought about Dan. He'd always stepped up for me, and I felt like this was my chance to repay him, even if he wasn't around to see it. So I set up an automatic transfer every month. $1,500 would leave my account and go straight into hers. It wasn't ideal, but I figured it was temporary. I kept telling myself that Noah would get a job or Mom would figure out how to budget, and eventually, they wouldn't need my help anymore. The first few months weren't terrible. I tightened my budget. No eating out, no splurging on things like clothes or vacations. It wasn't fun, but I managed. Every time I saw the deduction hit my bank account, I told myself I was doing the right thing. Family helps family, I kept repeating, even though I was starting to feel more like a bank than a daughter. Then things started to get weird. One weekend, I decided to visit. It had been a while since. I'd been back to the house. And I figured it'd be nice to see everyone. When I pulled up, the place looked rough. The yard was overgrown. The paint on the shutters was peeling, and there was a pile of junk by the garage that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. I walked inside, and it wasn't much better. The living room was complete chaos with this musty smell, like no one had bothered to clean in weeks. Mom was sitting on the couch clipping coupons, while Noah was sprawled out on the recliner, glued to his game console. "Hey," I said, setting down the groceries I'd brought. Mom looked up and smiled. "Oh, Mia, it's so good to see you." Noah barely glanced my way. We chatted for a bit, and I asked how things were going. Mom went on about how Noah was applying to jobs and exploring his options, which basically meant he was still doing nothing. I asked if he'd gotten any interviews, and she quickly changed the subject, which told me everything I needed to know. Later, I pulled Mom aside and asked her point blank, "Where's the money going?" "What do you mean?" she asked, feigning innocence. "I'm sending you $1,500 a month, but this house looks worse than ever. The bills should be covered, right? So why does it look like no one's doing anything?" She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "Mia, it's not just about the bills. Noah has needs, you know. He's been under a lot of stress, and I've been trying to make things easier for him." "Stress from what?" "He doesn't work, he doesn't go to school, and he spends all day playing video games," I shot back. Her expression hardened. "You don't understand. He's been under stress. He's sensitive, and he's been planning a little trip to clear his head. I thought it might help him figure things out." I stared at her, completely dumbfounded. "A trip to clear his head? Is that what my money is for? While I'm out here working my ass off, Noah gets to take vacations to figure things out?" She bristled at my tone. "Mia, he's been through a lot. You wouldn't understand." There it was again. That was her excuse for everything. Noah didn't have to contribute because he was sensitive. He didn't have to clean up after himself because he was sensitive. And apparently, I had to bankroll his lifestyle because, you guessed it, he was sensitive. I bit my tongue and decided to let it go for the moment. The next morning, I found myself cleaning the kitchen because I couldn't stand how gross it was. Noah wandered in, grabbed a soda from the fridge, and left without so much as a thanks. Later that evening, as I was packing up to leave, I noticed Noah had left his laptop open on the coffee table. It wasn't like I was snooping, but something caught my eye, an order confirmation email for some expensive gaming headset. $400, I muttered, staring at the screen. Noah walked in at that exact moment. "Oh yeah, needed an upgrade. My old headset was trash. I couldn't believe it." "With what money?" "Relax, sis. Mom covered it. She said it was from the family fund." He used air quotes, like it was some kind of joke. "Family fund? That's what she was calling my $1,500 a month now?" I could feel my blood boiling. "Are you serious, Noah? You can't even get a job, but you're out here blowing my money on gaming gear?" He rolled his eyes and smirked. "Oh, come on, you're loaded. What's the big deal? You're always preaching about how you've got it together. Maybe try not being such a buzzkill." That was it. That smirk, the way he acted like he was entitled to everything I'd worked for. It was like a switch flipped. I grabbed my bag and left without another word. But the entire drive home, my thoughts were racing. I'd spent years breaking my back to help them, and for what? So Noah could laugh at me while living off my money? I knew then and there I was done. When I got back home, I seriously considered cutting off the payments, but every time I thought about it, I'd hear Dan's voice in my head telling me to do the right thing. So I kept sending the money, even though it was starting to feel like I was enabling them. The final straw came when I ran into my aunt at the grocery store, of all places. I hadn't seen her in a while, so I waved and walked over, ready for the usual small talk. But the moment she looked up from her cart and saw me, I could tell something was off. She hesitated, her smile not quite reaching her eyes, and I could almost see her debating whether to say what was on her mind. "Mia," she said hesitantly, "I need to talk to you about something." "Sure, what's up?" I figured it was going to be some family gossip or maybe a rant about her neighbor. What I wasn't expecting was what she said next. "I'm sure she didn't tell you, but your mom's been talking about her will." She started cautiously, glancing around the aisle like someone might overhear. "She told everyone at dinner the other night that she's leaving everything to Noah." I froze. "Wait, what? Everything?" "Yeah," she said, shifting uncomfortably. "The house, her savings, even Dan's tools. Everything. She said she doesn't think you need anything because you're so independent, and Noah, well, you know how she is with him. She thinks he needs it more." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I laughed, but not because it was funny. It was the kind of laugh you do when you're so stunned you don't know what else to do. "Are you serious? After everything I've done for her? After all the money I've sent?" "I know," Carol said quickly, her hands up like she was trying to calm me down. "That's why I'm telling you. It didn't sit right with me." I mean, everyone at the table was kind of shocked when she said it. She even mentioned the Dan's workshop tools. She's giving them to Noah, too. I interrupted. She said it's part of the house. My aunt said, I thought you should know. You've done so much for her, Mia, and it's not fair. I don't know what she's thinking. I felt like I couldn't breathe for a second. It wasn't about the money or the stuff. I didn't need her inheritance. I was doing just fine on my own. But it was the principle of it. I'd been the one holding everything together. I'd been the one sending her $1,500 every month, cleaning up after Noah's messes, covering for her poor decisions, and putting off my own goals to make sure she and Noah were okay. And this was how she saw me, as someone who didn't matter enough to leave anything to. I took a deep breath and tried to keep my voice steady. Thanks for telling me, Carol. I appreciate it. She said, I'm sorry, Mia. I didn't know if I should say anything, but I couldn't keep quiet about it. You deserve better. After we said goodbye, I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while, just staring at the dashboard. Every memory of the past few years came rushing back, the sacrifices, the arguments, the constant feeling of being second to Noah. It wasn't about the will, it was about what it represented. I had given, and she had taken without a second thought. As I sat there in my car, everything started to click into place. This wasn't just about the will or the money, it was about respect, or the lack of it. I'd spent years bending over backward for Mom, sacrificing my own peace and stability to support her and Noah, and for what? To be brushed aside like I didn't matter, to have my efforts and sacrifices erased because I was independent enough? The realization hit me like a freight train. No matter how much I gave, it was never going to be enough for her. I'd always come second to Noah in her eyes. And if that's how she wanted it, fine. But I wasn't going to keep playing along in a game that was rigged against me from the start. So I did what I'd been too scared to do for months. I opened my banking app, stared at the recurring transfer for a long moment, and hit cancel. Watching that little confirmation pop up on the screen felt like a breath of fresh air and a storm brewing at the same time. Relief and panic fought for control. I knew what I'd done was right. I wasn't going to be their ATM anymore, but a part of me couldn't help wondering what kind of fallout I just unleashed. What would Mom say when she realized the gravy train had stopped? Would she call crying, blaming me for ruining their lives, or would she lash out, accusing me of being selfish and ungrateful? I didn't know, but a small, bitter part of me was ready for the explosion. After everything she'd said and done, I wanted to hear her reaction. I wanted her to feel, even for a second, how unfair it had been to take me for granted all these years. I didn't have to wait long. The next morning, my phone started blowing up. First, it was a text from Mom. The money didn't come through. Is there a problem with the bank? I stared at the screen, a mix of satisfaction and nervous energy building in my chest. There it was, the moment I'd been waiting for. The ball was in my court now, and for once, I wasn't going to play by her rules. I replied, already gearing up for the inevitable showdown. No problem with the bank. I canceled the payments. Her response came almost immediately. You what? How could you do this to us? We're counting on that money, Mia. Do you even care about your family anymore? I took my time typing back, knowing this would drive her crazy. Oh, I care about my family, Mom. That's why I'm no longer funding your retirement plan for Noah. I've done enough. She called instantly. I let it ring twice before answering, keeping my tone breezy. Hi, Mom. What's up? What's up? She shrieked. You're cutting us off? After everything I've done for you? Oh, you mean like prioritizing Noah's every whim and cutting me out of the will? I shot back. Yeah, I'm really feeling the love. Mia, it's not about love, she snapped, already switching to her victim voice. It's about need. Noah is struggling, and you're doing fine. You don't need the money. I couldn't help but laugh. Oh, he's struggling? Is that why he's planning a trip to clear his head? Must be nice to take a vacation while I'm out here working my ass off. She gasped. That's not fair. Noah has been under so much pressure. He deserves a break. Pressure? I said. From what? His grueling Call of Duty schedule? She went on full drama mode. Mia, you're tearing this family apart. Families help each other in hard times. You're abandoning us. Us? I leaned back in my chair, grinning. Mom, let's be real. I've been the one holding this family together for years. You cut me out of the will like I don't even matter, and now you expect me to keep playing ATM for Noah? Nah, I'm good, she exploded. You're ungrateful. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? You've always been jealous of Noah. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Jealous? I repeated, pretending to think about it. Oh yeah, Mom, I'm super jealous. Who wouldn't want to be a 22-year-old man-child living off his sister's money? Truly inspiring. She started yelling again, cycling through every guilt-inducing phrase in her arsenal. You're selfish, heartless. You're going to regret this when you're older. I waited for her to run out of steam. Then, with the calmest voice I could muster, I said, "Mom, I'm sorry you feel that way, but I'm done. If Noah needs help, he can figure it out himself. I'm not his safety net anymore." Her final words were a scream. "If you hang up this phone, don't bother coming back." "Okay," I said simply and hung up. Then I blocked her number. Over the next few weeks, she tried every trick in the book to get through to me. She used different numbers, sent dramatic voicemails, and even emailed me, "You're leaving us to starve. Noah is planning a trip to clear his head. How could you ruin this for him?" I couldn't help but laugh every time. Noah even tried texting me from a burner phone, "You're a terrible sister. Mom's crying because of you. Fix this, or we're done." I replied just once, "Get a life, Noah." Then I blocked him too. It's been 6 months since that call, and honestly, I feel like a completely new person. That $1,500 a month I used to send, it's sitting in my savings account now, under my name, building towards something that actually matters, my future. I'm finally making real progress on buying a house for me. I don't know how Mom and Noah are doing, and I don't care. I cut them off completely, no calls, no texts, nothing. I blocked them everywhere, and honestly, I don't want a life with them in it anymore. They made their choice, and I've made mine. For the first time, I don't feel guilty about putting myself first. The other day, I drove past a strip mall with a help wanted sign in the window of some burger place. For half a second, I thought about snapping a picture and sending it to Noah just to be petty, but then I remembered, I'm done wasting energy on them. I smiled, kept driving, and enjoyed the quiet, knowing their problems aren't mine anymore. Thanks for reading, guys. If you were in my place, would you take the move of cutting your family off completely? I feel like it was the right move, but I wouldn't mind hearing your take.